I think I'm a matchmaker more than a recruiter. It's not about a candidate being a good candidate or a company being a good company. Regardless of a strong resume, that person in the room just might not be the best culturally aligned. It's hard and it's supposed to be. This isn't going to be a job that's for everyone, but when you find the right person that's aligned, you'll feel it and the match will really be.
Welcome to What the FTE, the podcast for HR leaders who are done playing defense and ready to shape the future of work. What if this person with the most impact isn't the most experienced? I'm Melissa Marcelissen, and today I'm speaking with Alison Kaizer, talent partner at Golden Ventures and one of the sharpest voices in early stage hiring. We're going to talk about the end of manager status as a symbol, the rise of hands-on leadership, and why leveling in AI world is getting harder, but more important than ever. All right, let's get started. Alison, when someone asks what kind of a recruiter you are, what do you say?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. I think I'm a matchmaker more than a recruiter. I really believe that it's not about a candidate being a good candidate or a company being a good company, but really understanding the goals, the structure, the culture, and making the best matches. And I don't think there's ever like a universally good company or a universally good candidate. It's really about finding the right fit.
Yeah, I love that. I do a lot of coaching and people kind of at a certain level in their career, I always kind of say, are you interviewing your next opportunity as much as they're interviewing you? And to me, this really is aligned with that.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny because, especially with early stage startups, often founders will say to me, this is really hard. We need someone that's going to work disproportionate number of hours, or the compensation isn't going to be aligned with what, some of these folks are making in other larger organizations. And I say, you know what? It's hard and it's supposed to be. This isn't going to be a job that's for everyone, but when you find the right person that's aligned, you'll feel it and the match will really be there. And often the candidates that end up joining these companies, it's really a decision making algorithm between, do I want to make build something myself from the ground up? Am I ready to be an entrepreneur myself? Or do I want to go somewhere early, still have an opportunity to learn a little bit and to have a team and to get some mentorship before going off to do my own thing? And so it's just about, again, finding the right person that's going to say, oh my gosh, you guys are in the office, you're talking 7 days a week. And if I have an idea at 3 a.m., I can Slack you and someone might actually get back to me. That's amazing. I've been looking for that everywhere. That's the right person for us.
Awesome. Any kind of a follow-up question to that? Any tips for us, people that sometimes it's a struggle to get a hiring leader or a CEO, founder off of a certain logo? Like they get really excited about people who have been at XYZ company before or with a different group that they think highly of. Any tips for us to kind of align that message on, but what do we need versus, what could be maybe the first thought?
100%. And I will say there's one CEO in particular I'm thinking of where I sat down with him, slightly later stage company. I think they were a Series A at this point. But this was the CEO that was very focused on 5 or 6 different logos that he thought fostered really great talent. And they did. But I actually had him do an exercise where I said, look at the people that are your absolute top performers and look at the people that you brought on and were excited about but didn't work out, and take a look, actually evaluate where those candidates came from. And I would be interested for you to come back and tell me if the folks that came from these 3 or 4 companies that you think are so great end up being your top performers, and disproportionately they didn't. So sometimes it's a perception. It really comes down to a strong interview process where someone might have a great resume, you talk to them, you're excited, but from my experience doing a really great, very well thought out case study, or in a lot of early stage companies, I'm actually seeing a movement toward having someone come in and spend a day with the team, work on a project with us. We'll pay you, come in and let's actually work on a project together. Let's do a whiteboarding session. And then you get a real sense of how they interact in the room with everyone, how they keep up with the pace, how they take feedback. And a lot of the time you recognize very quickly that regardless of a strong resume, that person in the room just might not be the best culturally aligned.
Mm-hmm.
You're operating at a very, very early stage. So it's one thing to have someone that's a good interviewer. It's another thing to find a candidate and recognize that they're a really great real-time problem solver and collaborator. So
Right.
it's important to test for some of those things as well.
That's a great tip. I love that approach. Leads nicely kind of to my next question. What does make early stage team building so different?
It's really hard for a number of reasons. I mean, foundationally, first of all, you often don't have a talent team in place to give a great candidate experience. And even the best CEO is going to be pulled in 500 different directions, hiring being one of them, but also focused on building a business. And so bringing these early stage hires on, the absolute most important thing, but there's a deficit of time, sometimes a deficit of skill to actually get there. No employer brand yet. And then you're asking people to do the most, generally for less money, generally title ambiguous. And so there are a lot of factors and resource constraints, time and, financial resource constraints that make these hires very difficult. And it's basic math to think about how many companies really get past that early stage, the size of an early stage company versus like an enterprise. There's just a much smaller pool of candidates available that are open to or have experience in that very early stage. And so, this small pool of candidates that everyone knows are really great, incredibly competitive, ecosystem to bring them on. And so from that perspective, I think the matchmaking emphasis becomes even that much more important, because what's going to draw someone to come and work with you is going to be culture, solving a problem they're particularly passionate about, a founder that they really want to work with, and a deep rooted obsessive belief in the goals of the company. Nothing else, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. You touched on there kind of in the previous question too about, being a bit title ambiguous and, doing lots of different things, wearing different hats. When I follow you, so when I see what you're talking about lately, you talk a lot about early stage founders leaning towards builders instead of managers. What does that mean to you? And where is it obvious and where is it a bit more challenging?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think this is something I'm seeing not just at the very, very earliest stages, where, to be honest, this was always the thing, but actually in that mid stage, even growth stage portfolio company, where folks are looking to bring employees on that are not 100% managers. And so,
Mhm.
what everyone is really talking about is the future of organizations with AI. And I think there are so many companies now that are saying, we want to be 20 people or 30 people in perpetuity. And whereas before it was this, vanity metric to say we got to a certain size, or I'm a manager of manager and I'm managing this many people on my team. Now there's this real movement back toward output and
Mhm.
real metrics, business efficacy metrics, where you can say, as a team of one, I was able to leverage all of these different tools and come to this outcome. Or, I had a small team, but as a team of 3 or 4, these are all of the amazing things that we were able to accomplish. And I remained a player coach through the entire thing. I can go in as the first person and be hands on. And if you need me to manage one day, I'm happy to do that. And I have the skill and knowledge to hire and to manage. But if it's just me, I can get in the weeds and I can do it myself. And those folks are the absolute most sought after in market, not just at that very, earliest of stages where you expect to be so tactical, but even into some of those growth stages.
That's so interesting. So I focus a lot on leadership development, on, how we can set our leaders up to be successful. And it's interesting how all of that is evolving. I also still really believe we can't overcome some traditional leadership challenges with AI, with platforms, with programs. Like no matter how much, productivity tracking software you put in place or demand return to offices, things like that, if your leadership and foundation isn't strong, I don't think those things work that well. So I wonder what you think about, like, where does seniority still matter? Where does leadership still matter?
It's a great question. And we're sort of seeing this all happen and change in real time. I mean, knowing how to hire is important. Understanding how to manage people is important. Even if you're a team of 20, those 20 people will need leadership and development. They'll need
Mhm.
progression. They'll need performance reviews. They'll need growth opportunities. And so it's different in every single organization. I don't think there's necessarily one specific best practice. But one thing I am seeing, for example, is a lot of these companies that are early stage are bringing in a CTO that's very technical and sometimes has less years of experience than you would traditionally see, because it's a real AI native CTO that might be only a few years out of school, but has been operating with AI tools, for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, really since they got into technology. And then they may partner with a head of engineering who can come in and has more experience that can train and coach them on how to be a leader, be more responsible for the hiring and kind of the people management side of things, while still maintaining some kind of, hands-on requirements in the code. So
Right.
that's one path that I'm kind of seeing. But I would say in general, anytime I'm talking to a senior leader, and I definitely talk to a lot of people that are executive VP C suite, the advice that I'm giving constantly, especially if they're between jobs, is to do what you can to go out and start to get some tactical experience again and be comfortable actually getting into the weeds, experimenting with tooling. Not that that has to be 100% of your job, but if you can go into any company and say, push comes to shove, I can do this and I still know how to be tactical, that makes you disproportionately valuable to any organization now.
Yeah. What great advice. I was going to ask you for advice next, and that's like exactly what I was thinking too, is like how do we all keep in the game sort of thing? Like how do we make sure no matter what our job or role is that we're growing and we're learning and we don't rest on, hey, this is the thing I've done for 20 years.
Yeah.
So I know I'm the most qualified. That's really
Yeah.
interesting. On the other side, you talked a little bit at that most senior level, but regardless where someone's coming into the organization, how do you level someone up who's AI native? So maybe a bit closer to just being out of school or a bit earlier in their career. How do we continue to grow their other skills? Like, how do we make sure that they're ready to fit in to the organization?
I think some of these traditional L&D types of programs still really matter because these are, young people that might have a lot of technical skill, a lot of creative skill, but they don't necessarily have the professional experience. And so those fundamental skills still matter and they will always matter. At the end of the day, I wrote something yesterday about how in an AI world, human relationships still remain the most important thing when I think about how I'm operating in my business. And so some of that traditional training and coaching, I think really still holds a very important place. On the other side, when you're looking at even some of those mid-senior folks that aren't quite at that executive level yet, I know it's been such a natural tendency historically to go to your leader and say, "I need more headcount." Everyone is to stop and say, "What are other ways that I can scale myself or scale my existing team by building an agent, by leveraging new tools, all of the different things I can do and have a culture of experimentation first, with bringing on another human being like the absolute last resort."
Right.
That's the best way to really level yourself up. And then you'll be very thoughtful about bringing additional folks on. And you can and you should. Not to go off on a tangent, but it's interesting because I know there are a lot of people that have so much fear about AI taking jobs. No one's going to have a job anymore. But what I'm seeing is the ease with which you can actually start your own business and be an entrepreneur. It's so much greater than it's ever been in the past. And so I actually think we're going to have 100 times the businesses and they're going to be much smaller, but there's so much more opportunity. And instead of having to rely on a company to employ you, the barriers to entry to actually go out and build something yourself, if you establish some of that hands-on tactical skill, are so much lower that you're just going to see so many more entrepreneurs. And for that, I'm very, very excited.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very exciting. And it's exciting for those who don't see themselves as entrepreneurs either, because I know I didn't start my career in startups. And I know many people who've made the leap kind of over. And it's because you're ready to make more of an impact. But in a really big system, there's like it takes too long to get there, or there's too many things in the way. It takes too long to kind of enact any change. So when we, I say we, like people like me that have come from bigger organizations in their career, get to be in this environment. So if there's going to be more of these environments, we get to come in and make a bigger impact, grow. You get to grow your strategic skills, your other skills like a lot quicker. So that's super exciting. As you were talking about L&D still matters, all of those good things. I have to talk to people too about, when they feel like they're reaching a ceiling, it is almost never the technical things that's holding them back. It is that relationship building. It is the influence skills. Like all of those things go into people getting behind you, following you, and needing to balance both of those things are really tricky. Like making sure that you can still get into the weeds, do the work, be the person that's called on, but also have that influence skill, that executive presence, whatever you might want to call it. Do you have any examples of someone junior outpacing someone senior, kind of to that regard?
I just want to make sure I'm understanding the question
Mm-hmm.
Is it someone junior outpacing someone senior in terms of like their networking ability, or someone more junior that happens to be operating at a more senior level, like more tactically?
And tactfully. I wonder if there are people that are kind of doing both, coming in more junior because they are like the AI natives, all of those things. Have you seen people be able to really ramp up the other side just as quickly, and then do become more valuable throughout the organization because they can do both sides?
Absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't want to sit here and specifically start
Of
naming
course.
hers. If you look at someone like Andrew Young, New York based, one of the best, most well known network builders out there, not necessarily super, super senior in terms of his years of experience, but unbelievably skilled in terms of networking ability, community building, tech awareness. And this isn't really a new thing. I just think the
Mhm.
barrier to entry and the appetite for young people to come in and have that kind of impact are there in a way that they weren't necessarily in the past. Like historically, it would be very uncommon and be considered crazy to say, oh, this person is just out of school and we're going to put them in, a technical leadership type of position in my organization. But now so many of the founders that are building these incredible businesses are just out of school. And
Right.
so the perspective is so different. And a lot of, I mean, I'm Toronto based, and I would say so many of the schools around here, the Waterloos, the U of T's, are doing such an incredible job with programs like Socratica, and incredible internship programs with such a strong ecosystem here of really setting these young people up for success. So by the time they graduate, obviously they're not senior, but they're in a position where they can come into a business and have real impact and really operate quite quickly.
That's exciting. And I think, I would put myself in the senior bucket, 20 some years into my career. I think for me, I find it motivating. I find it like that challenge of like, how do we keep up? How do we keep growing? But it's cool to think about us maybe that are a bit more established in our career need to double down on our curiosity and learning and make sure that our technical side is solid. And then the people just coming in, it's like, what can they learn from the seniors on, influence, on relationships, on all of those kinds of things?
100%. It's the word you use, the perfect word, which is like around curiosity. I think anyone who's senior that doesn't say, I'm so set in my ways, I'm just going to continue to do things the way I've always done, but sits down on the weekend and starts vibe coding. They're willing to take a course, they're experimenting. They partner up with someone that's fresh out of school and say, let's build something together. Anyone that takes the time to be curious and ask, how should I do things now and not how have I always done things in the past, I think has the opportunity to be very, very successful moving forward. It's not just for the young people. I've seen lots of folks who are really senior doing unbelievable things just because they have that mindset of growth, right? That growth
Right.
mentality, and eternal curiosity.
Curiosity. Yeah, I love. I think of curiosity as a superpower, and no matter what your specialty is, how how you found your place in your career. I find anyone who's like really legit interested in what they do. So whether you're an engineer, whether you're a people person, whether you're a recruiter, whatever it is you do, if you're actually passionate about what you do, it's really easy to stay curious, right, and want to learn. Versus, oh, I'm set now. This is what I do. I'm going to do it.
I mean, I can speak for myself as an example because I would consider myself to be senior as well. At 20 years of experience, right? And so when I look at how, even when I came into Golden, we built a talent program. And since that time, every year, we've made major, major changes to it in terms of how we operate. Year one, I wasn't even talking to any candidates. I was just focused on strategic guidance. Year two, I said I want to start talking to people. Then I opened up the level. I was talking to people, not just chatting with executives, but some really strong mid-senior and senior folks that I thought could add value. Then we went back and rebuilt our entire flow, what our intake form looks like, all of our tracking metrics. I'm demoing no less than 3 tools every single week, constantly looking for new ways not only to improve internally, but that I can advise founders on how to operate with efficacy with low budgets and early stage. So I'm not going to them and saying, I did things this way at Ritual. This is how you should build your talent function. I'm constantly changing and iterating. So I really take this advice I'm giving personally. I live by this. And the way I'm operating today is going to be so different. I'm telling you, in 6 months, we could have a conversation and my entire process would have changed significantly. So,
Yeah, we should probably get in the calendar and do this again in 6 months. But I still have a couple of questions. What do you actually listen for in an interview? So what picks up some of those things that we've been talking about?
One of my favorite questions. So I think it's so easy in an interview to just talk about your experience and say, I've done this, I worked here, I reported to this person. What I really listen for when I'm asking someone about their experience are highlights and impact. I accomplished this. I impacted the business this way. I built something from the ground up. It wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for me. This is the mark that I left on a business. I look for passion, enthusiasm. Often one of the questions that I'll ask candidates is, of all of the companies that you've worked out, of all of your experiences, which is the one that stands out to you as the place that you did your best work and why? I get a lot of insight from asking that question. And then certainly, what would motivate a move for you right now? Like, what is the carrot that's going to draw you to your next opportunity? What is the thing that you're trying to solve for by considering a move? Get a lot of information from people and how they respond to that and understand what's really motivating them, which is what allows for that matchmaking process. And not just saying, oh, this person's worked in fintech, so guess I should try and find another fintech for them, but understand what's really deeply motivating them to find the best alignment.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. And that would those are great questions too, to make sure, again, what we talked about at the top, were not you're just getting the right person, but they're also getting the right role, right? So it's going to be a fit long term.
People ask me all the time, like, what questions do you ask? And it's such a difficult thing to explain, but I don't ask a lot of questions. It really comes down to talking to literally thousands and thousands of people and getting a sense of what a good answer sounds like. And when someone can say, here's all the impact I have, this is the best environment I've ever been in, I would do anything to be in an environment like that again, either because I was so passionate about the industry, or the stage was perfect for me because I got to build from the ground up, or this founder I worked with just motivated me so much because they had these characteristics, then I can go, oh my gosh, okay, I know, I understand you, and I have the perfect 3 people for you to talk to. And that only comes from talking to so many people.
Yeah.
Right? The questions are usually really simple. Like, tell me about yourself. What's motivating a move? Are there any absolute non-starters where you would say, Ali, never introduced me to a company in X industry, or there's no way I'm going to want to go beyond XYZ stage? But beyond that, there isn't a golden question that's going to give you, a perfect answer every time. It's really, to be honest, on the candidate to give you the information and for you to probe to get what you need to be able to make the best matches.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one last question for you, and that is, what is a leadership trait you think is aging badly?
A leadership trait that's aging badly. Oh my gosh, I feel like there are 3 that I think.
Oh, I'll take all 3.
Okay. So one, saying like, I'm the leader, so I'm not going to be hands-on, right? That's not my job. I'm too senior for that.
Right.
One would be, I want to manage a team of a certain size, or bragging that, you own a team of however many people, and that being the metric that matters most to you. Not that it doesn't matter, but that's not the thing that you should be optimizing for, in my opinion, to be able to express like your seniority. And the third would be looking at years of experience to level and saying, oh, this person has 4 years of experience, therefore they're intermediate, instead of really putting in the effort to test their aptitude and to level them based on impact and not based on years of experience.
Yeah, those are all really great. I couldn't agree more. I think one thing we kind of test for is empire building now,
Yeah.
because it has been such a measure of success to say, I have 200 direct and indirect reports. Like, that's been how we've measured success at a certain stage, or I've gone from 5 to 50, whatever that. But does that mean you're doing something wrong now? Like, does that mean you could have more efficiencies? Does that mean there could be another way to do this?
Well, I've been there, right? I joined Ritual at a certain size. I always talk about the growth. We ended up being hundreds of people all around the world. Not that that isn't a data point that matters. It certainly does, but it's not the most important.
Yeah. Interesting. I love that. Well, thanks again, Alison, for a sharp, honest take on what leadership really looks like in 2025. Your views were relevant, and hands-on, and I think they were so helpful. They were helpful for me, and I know our listeners will enjoy them too. Every people leader, I hope, is going to listen to this and pause and think about, when I'm hiring, when I'm looking for people, what am I thinking about, right? Can we get rid of the old playbook and start to be a little bit more dynamic? Because our world is moving faster than our systems can track. So I think we all need a whole lot of that. If this episode gave you something to think about, sign up for our free insight drop. The link is in the show notes, so you can check it out at certn.co/podcast. Huge thank you, Alison, for being here with us today. I love talking with you, and I am going to see if we can get something in the book for 6 months. I want to talk about what's changed.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.